Well, welcome back to Nittany Game Week. It is time for our Impact interview. And our guest this week, well, he had a major impact not only on Penn State, but also the NFL and the Nittany Lions baseball team. 4 stolen bases in one game. Maybe that's why the California Angels drafted him as well. Could have made a major impact in Major League Baseball, too. OJ McDuffie, thanks so much for joining us. We always appreciate your time, man.
Man, appreciate you guys having me on. It's truly an honor, definitely.
Well, look, there are some young men that are committed to Penn State watching the situation very closely with the coaching staff. Interim head coach Terry Smith's message is, look, it's Penn State. It's always going to be Penn State, and that speaks volumes right there. So for guys thinking about coming to Happy Valley at Penn State, and you were a running back in high school, and you decided to play wide receiver for the blue and white, you know, what kind of variables, what went into your decision, and what are some of the things that kids should be thinking about as they decide whether or not to go to Happy Valley?
Well, I think Coach Smith said it best. This is Penn State. You know, it's a big institution, more about everything, not just football. And I think the reason I chose Penn State is because it was everything more than football. You know, the atmosphere, the coaching staff, the players on the team. It was a place that I knew when I wasn't playing football and I wasn't going to class, who do I want to hang out with? And most of those guys that are Penn Staters were the kind of people I wanted to be around. And it carries on to this day. All my best friends are Penn Staters. Most of them live down here in South Florida because of that bond that we created at Penn State off the field. And I think that's a great reason for people to go because our community is huge. And there's a lot of love in the Penn State, Nittany Lion Nation.
So let me ask you this, OJ. We ask this of every guy, former player that comes on the show. If you were allowed to make NIL deals, and I know you were never shy about, the money that was being made around us when we would talk about it back then, but if you were allowed to make NIL deals back then, what company or companies would you have wanted to have a deal with when you were in college?
Oh man, I've been thinking about this, man. Mine would probably be the Lions Den. You know, uh, yeah. 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 Think about it is, man, back in the day, I love State College and, it was so strict and Joe was so great about us not getting into a bunch of trouble. At a young age, we couldn't go into, any clubs or bars or anything like that. And most of them had a program, with all our pictures and birth dates in them and everything like that, man. So, but not real being serious, Chris Rosengren, who owns Lions Den now, is a great friend of mine. And I would love to endorse and and whatever represent his company as well, man. But once I got to 21, man, Lions then became my favorite place. And when I go back every single time for a home game, I make sure I stop by there.
Hey, OJ, when you got to Penn State, one of your teammates was Terry Smith. Did you see some of the makings of a college football coach in Terry back then?
Absolutely, man. His attitude, his smarts, his toughness, his playmaking ability, his way he's led, and even coaching me up a little bit, Scrap. When I'm a guy that's trying to play his position at that point. When Dave Daniels was still there, he was still on point and helping me out. He's always been a true leader. The team barber, everybody came to him for advice. So all those things as you go to a barbershop, that's what happens. Everything about Terry meant, showed that he could be a guy that could be a leader of men. And of course, leading a program like Penn State when the opportunity presented itself, man. And so, yeah, I definitely felt like, he'd be a great guy, a great candidate. I told him this, if anything were to happen, I hope he got an opportunity. He's getting his opportunity, man, and hopefully he gets many more along the way.
OJ, there's a lot of coaching vacancies in college and in the NFL, soon to be, I would imagine, even more so. But you played for 2 guys that did it just about better than anyone else when it comes to just winning games. Joe Paterno in college, and then, of course, Don Shula in the NFL. What are some of the common themes between those two that made them both so successful?
Yeah, how about that? What a blessing, right? You go from the greatest college football coach ever to the greatest pro football coach ever, man. And and I still talk about those two in true high regards when I talk about the coaches, man. I think both of them, they were so demanding, commanding, but they're also respectful, and they treated us all like men. And I think that was one of the main things that we really appreciate. They cared about the little things that were important in life, not just on the football field. And I think that carries on, man. And I know Joe had he has so much more responsibility taking, boys and turning them into men and worry about school, worry about football, worry about everything else that goes on in life. whereas Coach Shula only had to deal with the professional aspect of everything. But at the same time, though, man, both of them were cut from the same cloth. Grueling, tough, fair, and I enjoy playing for both. Playing for Joe Paterno prepared me to play for Coach Don Shula, and I think he respected that.
So before there was a Bolitnikoff Award, there was the Paul Warfield Trophy, went to best wideout in the country, which you won in 1992. You're in the Dolphins Walk of Fame. Your accomplishments speak for themselves. So what things in your career meant the most to you, and what do you miss all these years later?
Well, I joke now, Jay, about, only fun days in football now are Sundays and paydays. So I kind of miss all that stuff, but the rest they can keep, man. But honestly, just the opportunity that I got to play in the NFL. As a child, you always dream of playing in the league, but then you're always worried about the next steps, junior high football, high school football, being able to get a scholarship to go to Penn State or wherever, some of these young men get to go, and then you get to realize that childhood dream, man. But just getting drafted in April of '93, that was such a huge accomplishment for me and my family, man. It just meant the world to us.
Of athlete can transfer any year they want. Some of them get impatient when things get tough. What advice would you give this generation of student athlete?
Yeah, Scrap, man, it's a tough deal, man. And I get some of the guys that are in their fourth or fifth year and they're not playing and they want to get an opportunity to go to the next level. But I think guys need to stick out their commitment as long as possible. And I think it all falls on the university or the NCAA when it comes to giving these guys that ability to just move on whenever they want. I get it. If a coach gets fired, I think players should be able to move on too. I think if a coach takes another job, players should be able to do what they have to do at times. But that commitment it's gone now when it comes to guys now, and it's sad. I think for me, if I committed to Penn State as a wide receiver, like I talked about earlier, I was a running back in high school, but I went to Penn State knowing all we did was run the football. But I saw that change and the way everything changed with with Coach Paterno. When you get a guy like, John Saka, Tony Saka, and you get, then of course, Kerry Collins, you change the game to the what fits what your mold is. And so I think guys honestly, need to stick it out longer. I think they should make guys stick it out a little bit longer, but give them an opportunity when certain things happen within the organization or within the program.
OJ, one of the things that's changed through the years is the media and, the coverage of teams and for players, the access to give their opinion on something or to get their personality out there. I mean, Jay mentioned, and we were joking around about NIL deals and stuff, but, if people are watching, they're probably looking at you going, man, that's guy sounds like he could be doing a podcast, which you are. The fish tank, as you covered the Miami Dolphins. The way that's changed as well, those opportunities that people have, not just, the college athletes, but all over the place to give their opinions, to interject personality into stuff. How much do you think that has changed things and how much do you value that opportunity to be able to discuss and elaborate on football or whatever you want to in that kind of format?
Yeah, so much has changed. So much information is out there. Also, so much disinformation is out there when it comes to being, an athlete now, and so much scrutiny. If you wanted to get to us back in the day, you had to write a letter, and hopefully it didn't get to us if you were being mad about me dropping a pass or fumbling a punt or something like that. But nowadays, man, these kids, what they go through it's tough. It really is tough. And for me being in the position I am, being on the Fish Tank podcast, I try to be as fair as I can to all the athletes because I was an athlete. I'm never looking for when a bad situation happens, never looking for anybody's job because I know how tough it is to do the jobs that these coaches and GMs and players, what they do. So I just, for me, it's just more about just being fair because I was in their shoes at one point. I would never want anybody coming for me if something bad were to happen, man. So a tough time, but you know what? They have to adapt. We always had to adapt as you go along, and everybody's adapted along the way in their lives with social media being a part of it. And these guys being so involved in it, they got to have the good with the bad. So they got to be ready for all that.
Awesome. Well, OJ, we appreciate the time, man, and we could fire questions at you all day long, but we appreciate you sharing some of your stories and look forward to seeing you down the road.
That's right, babe. Thank you. Appreciate it, fellas.